Hello, I'm Alicia Barry. Welcome to the Business Summer Series as we take a look back at some of the biggest stories that made headlines in the past year. Coming up on the program, profits over pay. The Senate slams systemic wage theft in Australia, costing workers billions of dollars a year. And the new normal, empowered employees permanently working from home and why their bosses are happy about it.
We work on the basis that people here are adults, they can make adult decisions, and that means they'll probably make right decisions.
Also on the program, tackling the construction boys club, the push to get women workers onto the building sites and sexism off them.
He said, "Oh, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know why I should listen to you. Why don't we go to the bathroom and have a striptease?"
After decades of confidentiality, pay transparency advocates were calling for an end to secrecy around salaries as Australia headed into a federal election. They argued employment clauses and workplace cultures preventing people from discussing what they earn helped suppress wages, with women and vulnerable groups losing out the most. Daniel Ziffer reports.
El área socioemocional de los niños, porque esa parte no está quedando bien.
After 2 years in and out of the office, you definitely know more about your colleagues. But you probably don't know what they earn.
Pay secrecy is a feature of Australia's workplace relations system. It is common in a lot of workplaces.
Pay secrecy is everything from clauses that stop you telling co-workers what you earn to cultures of silence.
By preventing the flow of information and the sharing of information, absolutely suppresses wages. It creates cultures of fear and distrust and silence. And women, they cop at the worst.
The Workplace Gender Equality Agency has previously said there's no definitive answer on whether pay secrecy is directly related to the gender pay gap, but that the research evidence from Australia, the US and the EU suggests that pay secrecy may contribute to it. It did say pay secrecy prevented equal pay for equal work, and that employees tend to overestimate their co-workers' pay if they do not have full information about salaries. The Labor Party has long promised to abolish pay secrecy clauses if it wins the election. Businesses aren't convinced.
Again, if this is across the whole economy, then that's something we should talk about. And again, what are we trying to solve with that? Certainly for the
pay equality amongst men and women in the same workplace.
Let's make sure that that's the reason we actually want to solve it.
A former Commonwealth Bank employee has taken the issue to the Fair Work Commission, accusing CBA of breaching his workplace rights by sacking him, in part because he allegedly discussed overtime and penalty rates with colleagues. The bank said the worker's employment was terminated for a range of conduct and performance issues.
Research around pay secrecy is difficult because employers don't want to provide that kind of information. But what we do see is there is a trend amongst employees asking for more and more transparency.
Pay secrecy abounds in banks and financial services, where bonuses and commissions rule. But technology is breaking down old walls. Websites like Glassdoor receive anonymous pay rates from workers and provide data of salaries inside named companies. Studies have found a close relationship between sites like it and official labour force figures.
So people are actually putting accurate information into those databases.
Employers contend there's a social taboo around discussing money, and that they're simply reflecting employee wishes when they enforce pay secrecy. But there's not a lot of academic evidence to support that. With some of Australia's biggest names, including the Commonwealth Bank, Qantas, 7-Eleven and the ABC, found to have ripped off workers in recent years, it's getting harder to argue against transparency.
And if people don't know what their colleagues earn, they'll guess anyway.
So they'll look at where you live, how you live, where you send your kids to school, and they'll make assumptions about what you get paid on the basis of what they see.
Keep all of those distractions out of the way.
In a world where more is on show than ever.
3, 2, 1. Maple, excuse me.
Systemic, sustained and shameful. That's how a Senate inquiry described wage theft in Australia. It says workers are being robbed of billions of dollars every year as businesses race to the bottom to push down pay and increase profits. Calls continued for new laws to stop bosses ripping off workers, as Rihanna Whitson reports.
Chantal Zenfeld was excited to get an after-school job at Subway, but it didn't take the 17-year-old long to suspect she was being underpaid.
I did calculate how much I was meant to get paid if I got paid the legal amount, and it was close to $300 for 8 weeks of work.
Chantal's not alone. A Senate inquiry's found wage theft is endemic in Australia. She's now taking her claim, which covers franchises in 3 states and 60 staff, to the Fair Work Commission.
Seeing my other co-workers be so oblivious to it all and knowing that I had more knowledge than they might have inspired me to take action and help others.
It's estimated around 13% of the workforce has been underpaid, costing Australians more than $1.3 billion a year. Nearly 3 million workers are also losing $5 billion in unpaid superannuation. Advocates are backing the Senate inquiry's key recommendation to create national laws to make wage theft illegal.
The entire system allows for both the conditions that give to exploitation and then creates incredible barriers for people to pursue their underpaid wages using the existing legal structures.
Migrant workers and international students like Carla, who doesn't want to use her real name, are at a higher risk of exploitation. She was sacked from her traffic control job when she asked to be paid.
I feel afraid, I worry, I work with all demands, and I feel a little bit intimidated in that time.
With the help of Redfern Legal Centre, she took her employer to court.
After 9 months, he paid me.
Employer groups say underpayment is unacceptable, but often happens by mistake.
If we are going to eradicate the worst issues here, then the most important thing to do is look at how we can simplify the system.
While wage theft is rife in lower paid industries like hospitality, retail, cleaning and horticulture, some of the nation's biggest employers have also been guilty of underpaying staff, like Qantas, Coles, Woolworths, Super Retail Group, the big banks and the ABC. Natalia Majstorovic is part of a wage theft claim against Sydney University.
On average, every week I'm paid for 28 hours of prep and face-to-face teaching, and I'm probably working about between 40 to 45 plus hours.
She alleges the uni owes her more than $20,000.
They're relying that we're going to do it anyway. We'll just get the job done, because if we don't get it done, we also won't have a job next semester.
With pay packets failing to keep up with the cost of living, wage theft is shaping up to be a political issue in the looming election.
Just over 2 years on from the first stay-at-home orders, a revolution in how we work has been reshaping Australian lives. The impacts are being felt from CBDs to the suburbs and even in the regions as newly empowered workers resist calls to return to the office full-time. Daniel Ziffer again.
Jenny and Wally are at work.
Work-life balance immediately became so much more positive for me.
Like millions, Jenny isn't going back to the office full-time. She'll continue working from home even as COVID restrictions ease.
It's not the same life at all. It's for me, it's a much better balance. I'm a lot more relaxed. I'm a lot more relaxed in what I need to do during the day. I feel less pressure. There's a lot less distractions.
Having stopped a daily 2.5-hour commute through Melbourne's suburbs, she's only expecting to visit the office once a year. And her boss is delighted.
If a boss is saying you've got to come back to work, I think the reasonable question is why? Why do I have to do that? How does the business benefit? How does the individual benefit?
Almost none of Mark Fletcher's 75 employees are coming into the office.
We work on the basis that people here are adults, they can make adult decisions, and that means they'll probably make right decisions. They'll make mistakes from time to time, but overall they'll make right decisions.
Tonight, empty streets as Victorians stay in.
It's eerie in the city.
I've never seen it so quiet.
The pandemic has changed lives because over 1/3 of workers can do at least part of their job at home.
We've fundamentally challenged the traditional way of working on where, how and when work is done, and it has worked. There have been really positive outcomes for organisations and for people.
Compared to 2019, office occupancy in the Melbourne CBD is at 15%, and it's similar in Sydney at 18%. Even cities barely touched by restrictions are seeing far more empty desks now than before the pandemic. The combination of long commutes, cheap technology and newfound freedoms means 2 years into an experiment that was forced upon us, there's a new normal.
I'm not going to tell my people what day they need to be back in the office or how many days they need to be back in the office. I think, we're really going to embrace this new way.
Major employers are weighing up how much real estate they need, now that office workers might only come in 2 or 3 days a week.
Gone are the days where you see the old brown carpet and brown walls and just a very stale type of office environment. That's not going to attract workers back to the office.
Software company boss Luke Anea is inside his company's new building that embraces a hybrid model of work.
Some prefer to work at home for periods and others love to be in the office. So we need to make sure that we're building workplaces that provide teams that flexibility so that they can do their best work each day.
So the balance of power has really shifted from employers to employees, and employees want flexibility.
Before the pandemic, only 2 of Mark Fletcher's 75 employees worked from home. Now he's got employees in New Zealand and interstate. Staff are more productive and happier.
Awful as COVID has been, I think it gives us an opportunity for a reset and a refresh towards this brighter future of a different working situation.
The tools that office workers use, like email, video conferencing and shared documents, have been around for decades. Many of them are free. What the pandemic changed 2 years ago is it forced bosses to trust their staff to work even when they couldn't see them.
I think giving the flexibility to your employees to work at home allows you to work the best way that suits you.
More productive workers and happier puppies.
Australia's unemployment rate is holding at a near 50-year low. But one sector which has shed hundreds of jobs in the last few months is tech. It was one of the best performers when COVID first struck and benefited greatly from consumers being forced to stay home. But now with interest rates on the rise, companies are finding it harder to attract investment. David Chow reports.
Paul Brown used to work for a startup, providing software to emergency services. But last week, he lost his job, along with dozens of his colleagues.
Some of the things that worry me, really, at my stage of life, are that if you don't quickly find another job, then what can happen is that you end up becoming demotivated.
He's not alone. Across the world, thousands of workers in the tech sector have been let go in the last few months. It's a similar story in Australia.
So this is our Generation 3 Maverick.
At this solar tech company in Sydney, Chris McGrath has had to cut a quarter of his workforce.
Yeah, it's a very difficult decision for us to make, and it's one that we didn't make lightly, but one that we also made with confidence that it was the right thing for the business and what we needed to do to get on a more sustainable footing. We also operate in an industry that's been hit really hard by COVID, supply chain challenges, geopolitical challenges.
Earlier this year, Chris's business was able to secure $30 million from private investors, even though the cost of borrowing money continues to surge. Like many tech firms, the 5B Solar Company was able to hire lots of extra workers during the pandemic, when interest rates were slashed to almost zero and governments pumped trillions of dollars into their economies. But now all that stimulus is being removed, businesses have to make tougher choices. It's harder for companies to attract investment, especially if they're burning cash rapidly and not turning a profit. Share prices have crashed, particularly the buy now, pay later firms. Takeovers are being abandoned, like Zip's bid for Sezzle, and companies are being wound up, including the neobank Volt, leading to another 140 job losses. The price of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies have also tanked in this higher interest rate environment. Since November, they've shed about 70% of their value. The head of cryptocurrency firm Banksa, Holger Arians, had to lay off 70 of his employees.
That was a very difficult decision we had to make, unfortunately, but the reality is we've certainly hired very, very fast. We also didn't get the productivity we wanted from the additional people we hired.
Fledgling startups are also finding it tougher to attract funding from private investors.
In 2015 or so, the average was 1.5 years to their first investment, according to Crunchbase data, and it's now 3.2 years to their first investment.
Meanwhile, Paul Brown is furiously working his contacts to find his next gig.
My job at the moment is to stay motivated, talk to people that I've worked with that would like me to come and work with them again, and just stay positive.
He's hoping to end his career on a high note.
Worker shortages have been hurting construction, the nation's most male-dominated sector. The women that do work on building sites report it's a boys' club where sexism is rife. But there are people trying to change that, and with some urgency. Rihanna Whitson again.
At this building site, it's women calling the shots.
What about those lights? Are they coming in too?
When Ashley Kopak joined the industry 6 years ago, it didn't take long to experience sexism on the job.
I was trying to tell one of the guys on site to do something, and he said, "Oh, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know why I should listen to you. Why don't we go to the bathroom and have a striptease?"
Her boss has copped similar treatment.
I think it's one thing not to win a tender, but it's another to then hear that your competition has reported that you should probably go back to making lunchboxes. It's something that I'm still facing now as a managing director.
Construction is the most male-dominated workforce in Australia, made up of only 13% women. 2% work in trades, the rest do administration and support roles. Around 3/4 of women in the sector have had an unpleasant experience on the job because of their gender.
Some of the challenges are just, arriving at a job site and there's no female toilets.
Industry leaders want to change that. They want women to make up 25% of the construction workforce by 2025. With females making up around 4.5% of apprentices, it's a big ask.
Making it easier for women to be a part of the industry and feel wanted in the industry is opening up your labour recruitment to another 50% of the population. It just seems common sense, really.
The first woman to be CEO of Master Builders Australia says the sector's productivity depends on a diverse workforce.
We know we need to fill something like 500,000 jobs over the next 10 years. We need to be better at attracting all people, including women, into the industry.
The percentage of women in construction has been stubbornly low for decades, and the National Association of Women in Construction says cultural change will be needed if the industry's future is going to be female. They also want portable parental and carers leave, flexible work and gender mandates on government-backed jobs.
If we get more women involved in the industry, then we will make a significant dent in that gender pay gap that we're focused on as a country.
The immediate challenge is getting a lot more women into trades training.
So the teachers, the career advisors, they need to know where to guide a young woman that might be interested in a career in construction.
And it's not just physically demanding jobs on offer.
Being a head contractor, being a project manager, being a contract administrator, being an estimator, a BCA consultant, an engineer, there's just so many different careers that are in construction that can be very rewarding.
Having females on site will change the culture for the better. It will make a construction site a much nicer place to work.
This apprentice agrees.
It's never a repetitive job, there's always something different, so it's definitely, if it's your passion, stick to it and just never give up.
A call for a steel-capped female revolution.
Millions of Australians are at risk of losing their jobs to automation by the end of the decade, and it's women who are in the front line. Repetitious roles such as clerks, bookkeepers and bank staff will be the first to be taken over by machines. So workers in those industries are being urged to upskill, as Amelia Terzon reports.
For years, technology and robots have been taking over factories, mining sites and warehouses. Automated services have replaced humans in supermarkets, banks and airports. And you might not know it, machines are also invading the office. Take translators, they're increasingly using voice recognition software.
You pop something into Google Translate 10 years ago and it was shocking, it was absolutely appalling. But you pop something in now and you can trust it for the most part.
And that is drastically changing their jobs.
I think a lot of translators will become proofreaders or checkers as opposed to translators. But they can't necessarily earn as much money from proofreading as they could have with translation.
Data supplied to the ABC shows the jobs most at risk from automation in the next 5 years. Many are office-based, and it's women who will be disproportionately affected.
Females are more likely to be negatively impacted by technology than males. Jobs that are most at risk of being automated by technology are the things that are routine driven. So if you're working in spreadsheets, if you are doing the same sort of analysis over and over again.
A survey has found that 1 in 2 workers feel they aren't being trained for digital advances.
It's about reskilling. It's about identifying the people who are at risk and reskilling them into roles that are less at risk.
Some professionals think that AI is making their lives easier. Insolvency expert Shabnam Anababy now spends less time crunching numbers and filling out paperwork.
That additional time allows me to then explore options for the clients as to whether there's an opportunity to save their business or to investigate suspect transactions.
All sorts of jobs are being taken over by machines. Even my job as a reporter is under threat from digital renders.
Like me, that can be passed off as humans. I don't take sick days or need overtime or time in lieu, but I could get a virus.
As machines learn to copyright, software engineer Vaibhav Namburi has cut the number of blog writers he hires in half.
And those 3 just basically manage the work of 6 because their jobs move from manually writing stuff to just basically using AI to create content.
His startup is helping fintechs approve home and car loans.
This was the job that was previously done by an analyst or an underwriter or someone internally within the business that has now become completely automated. So you just double tap it and then sort of drives by itself.
Still in the driver's seat as the machines compete for work.
Racism in Australian workplaces is rife and not enough is being done to address it, according to new research. Experts are calling for laws to be reformed so that those who experience it can seek redress. They also want government agencies to start collecting diversity data from employers. A warning: this report from Nassim Kadem contains racist and offensive language.
Jacqueline Stewart still feels traumatised by the racism she experienced when she was an employee of New South Wales Health.
Even if I am qualified, I'm finding that I'm struggling to get into employment now. It's impacted my family. Yeah, it's been a massive impact.
Jacqueline was working in an area that deals with victims of domestic violence and abuse in Indigenous communities. She lodged an internal complaint about colleagues drinking and one painting their face black at a work event.
I'd received a few phone calls from people who had seen that and asked me directly if that was blackface, and they found it very offensive to be up on a Health New South Wales Facebook page.
Before an investigation was launched, she raised the incident with management.
She had said to me, 1, I think it's your cultural background that's affecting you from seeing why people might have a drink at work.
A spokesman for New South Wales Health said they take allegations of racism and bullying seriously, and that the case was fully investigated and appropriate action was implemented for those involved. Diversity expert Div Pillay says racial profiling against minorities in workplaces is common.
At the height of the Afghanistan crisis, women who are of Muslim faith, even though they didn't wear a hijab, were telling us that they had comments even in the office about, what are your cousins and the Taliban going to do next? Those sorts of comments that really made them isolated.
The cost of racism to the economy from mental health services and loss of income is estimated to be nearly $45 billion a year. A recent survey of public sector workers found 76% either witnessed discrimination and/or experienced discrimination. 69% had low or no confidence in the reporting process, and 15% expressed concern for their physical safety.
One woman cited that she was told that if it was really that bad that she should go to the Victoria Police and report it there. So from these women's accounts, it's almost like disincentivizing them to report, and this a lack of care around what they were currently experiencing.
Hala Abdel Noor says she's experienced racism in several workplaces. In her previous role as a social worker, she was stunned when her manager asked this question.
Why are the Lebos destroying Coburg and Broadmeadows? So I was quite shocked, disappointed, angered, but I maintained, I managed all of that and stayed calm and thought, well, this is an opportunity to provide an answer and have an open conversation and hopefully challenge this person's way of thinking.
Experts are calling for government agencies to start collecting detailed data on diversity in workplaces in the same way they do with gender. They also want the law governing racism to be reformed.
The law itself is outdated, is ineffective. People can come to the law and its ability to offer you remedy and redress is limited.
Jacqueline says she didn't feel safe to return to New South Wales Health.
So they wanted me to go back to work with no cultural safety plan, no acknowledgement of the racism or the blackface.
She worries that if complaints aren't properly addressed, the social and economic cost to the nation will soar.
And that's all from this episode of the Business Summer Series. For more on our business stories, head to the ABC News website or catch up anytime on iView. The Business will return on air weeknights from January 30. I'm Alicia Barry. Thanks for watching.